Liran Hirschkorn, your host of the E-commerce Mindset podcast, and this was a really fun episode I got a chance to host this week because it not only has one guest or two guests, but I had the pleasure of having three guests with me on the show. We had the VP of Acquisitions, Nate Jackson from Perch, as well as one of their category brand managers, as well as a seller who sold the brand, their brand, Cali White, to Perch on the show. So we'll really have this discussion of hearing both kind of perspectives from the seller side, the journey of selling to an acquirer of Amazon businesses like a Perch, as well as from their perspective, why they decided to buy the brand, and some of the insights you'll hear along the way. For example, some of the things that the seller would have done differently had he kind of done this all over again and kind of knew what he was entering into going through the process. So I think you're really going to enjoy this episode with founder of Cali White, Casey, as well as VP of Acquisitions at Perch, as well as their category brand manager. So enjoy this episode. The episode is sponsored by incrementumdigital.com. Incrementum Digital is a growth engine for brands on the Amazon platform with full brand management, advertising, and DSP, as well as a full suite of creative services that we are offering brands to help them scale and grow the business on Amazon. In addition, if you're looking for growth capital for your business, I'm an advisor to a company that is building out growth capital plans for brands. Been able to help many sellers just in this past April alone. We helped fund about $7 million in lending, including $1.3 million that was approved just over the weekend for a seller. And lastly, if you're looking to exit your business, there is a lot of excitement currently around exits, around valuations rising. Feel free to reach out to me. My email's in the show notes, whether it's on growth capital, Incrementum Digital, or exiting your business, and I can help guide you. Enjoy this podcast episode all about the process of buying, selling with both the seller and the buyer on the show. Okay, so really excited to have some special guests on the podcast today. Kind of a unique episode because we normally have one guest on the podcast, but today we actually have a more of a panel and a discussion. First with Nate Jackson, VP of Acquisitions at Perch, Casey Coleman, who just sold his brand Cali White to Perch, as well as Mike Woolner, the category manager or brand manager that's working directly with Casey on growing the brand at Perch. So thank you guys so much for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us, Aaron. Yeah.
Awesome. So I'm going to start with you, Casey, a little bit on the story of, how you got into starting Cali White and kind of the journey of, growing that brand on Amazon.
Sure. Yeah. So back in, I think, 2017, my wife was having really serious autoimmune issues. So as the same story a lot of people have, they're going to doctors, specialists, and getting no help at all. So we went down the path of, changing diet, really examining what she was putting in her body on a daily basis, and consequently me as well. So we noticed the oral care products that we're using, there was tons of chemicals, and she's actually a dental hygienist also. So, that gave me some insight in the space, and I saw a really big white space for a cleaner, way to whiten oral care products. So that gave me the idea. I also am I had e-commerce experience. So I look at trend data, search data, and I noticed, yes, there was an opportunity. So 2017, I launched our first product, which was the charcoal whitening toothpaste. And it just timed the trend perfect. And that's actually how I met you, Liram, is you're one of my customers, fortunately, for a while. So it's full circle now. But then we launched whitening kits. We exploded in growth from 2017 to 2019 to where towards the end of 2019, we were doing over $1 million a month in our channels. And then into 2021, we were continuing our growth, and then COVID hit and we had some supply chain issues. So we ran into the main ingredient in our whitening gels is called Car Bomber. And that's all also the main ingredient in hand sanitizer. So you can imagine that caused some supply chain issues. So we, tried to navigate that as best as we could. And then it coincided with, Nate reaching out and, the growth of the FBA acquisition market. I had no intention of selling, to be honest, but then I kept getting emails from Nate and Perch first, and then a couple other, I'm like, okay, this must be a sign, and I knew what I needed to do to like continue the growth, right? I needed a really solid team. And so when they approached me, I was at an inflection point where I was like, all right, am I going to have to hire 10 really highly qualified people or agencies to get to the next level? Or Nate, and I'm looking at their LinkedIn pages and I'm seeing all Ivy League, Bain, and then all this experience. A lot of them were high up at Wayfair.
I'm definitely not an Ivy League folk, but I snuck in.
But yeah, so I'm just looking at the caliber of people over there, and I'm like, how am I going to ever afford to have a team like this to take it to the next level? So that's really where the decision process came. So I don't know if you have any more questions, but that's kind of the arc. I wanted to keep it as close as possible.
So the process started, basically you were not necessarily of the mindset of looking to sell the business, but you got approached by, like you said, by Perch and by, several other companies.
Yes.
Which sort of like, you said to yourself, okay, maybe it's time to sell the business.
It was definitely a sign when you see a market trend like that. And then like, if I thought I could have easily grown it myself, but yeah, like I said, I knew I needed a team of highly quality individuals. As you know, Liam, very well, like e-commerce gets constantly more complex, and you need like, like an agency like yourself running it. You need several teams. Now, it used to be easier to kind of be a one-man band, but not now. And so having a new son, that was another big decision. And actually, if you don't mind, I'll tell a quick story. So when we were going through the negotiating process, I don't even know if Nate knows this. He sent me the contract at 11:15 p.m. on I think a Thursday or Friday night. My wife had went into labor at 11 p.m. 15 minutes before. So she's in labor. I'm on the DocuSign trying to sign the contract while she's like in between contractions. It was pretty intense situation. But yeah, it's all exciting. So
yeah. For the record, if I knew that you were doing that, I would have screamed at you. Just put away the DocuSign.
I couldn't.
And give it a few days.
Sell the business before the baby.
But
Lear knows what it's like to have
document.
an Amazon business. Yeah, I was like, I don't want any issues. I want to, So, but that's pretty funny.
I do think that the only time that I went 24 hours without exchanging some form of contact with Casey was when his wife went into labor, and so I kind of suspected that is what had happened.
Yes.
We were psyched for you guys.
Yes.
So Nate, you had mentioned to me kind of like when we spoke a little bit about doing this podcast, this is one where we, there was some challenges with this brand, right? Probably the supply chain and some of these things. So like, as you look at it from a buyer standpoint, what are your thought process on, okay, we're taking this thing on, but there's been some challenges with this brand, in the last year, and like, what are the things that you're weighing on sort of deciding to buy this brand?
Yeah. So as Casey was talking, I was thinking the pandemic giveth and the pandemic taketh away. Mm-hmm. Like everyone was impacted somehow by 2020, right? A lot of brands for the better, but with more complexity. Some to the net, some face new challenges. And at Perch in general, really briefly, we're acquiring leading e-commerce brands that have done really well. The number one most important thing we look for is a product that has demonstrated with thousands and hundreds of thousands or millions of customers that people like it, that is a good product, that it outperforms its competitive set, and has solid fundamental unit economics. And there's a whole lot that goes beyond there, but we believe that when you've got a good product and a brand with real potential, that we've got time to figure out how to pull a bunch of different levers, and that's what Mike is working on our team, to sort of have the long-term view of growing these brands for many years into the future. And so, when we started to get to know Casey, he's just a lovable guy. Like every conversation we had with him was super fun and good.
How important is that the founder personality dealing with them in general in the acquisition process?
I would say, like inevitably, and anybody who's bought or sold a business will tell you that you really just have to have a trusting relationship with each other, because no matter what contracts you write, there are points in time when both directions are just totally exposed. That if somebody is not, is like, I don't know, is wants to treat you poorly, they absolutely could. And so at the end of the day, I put a high value on spidey sense of the character of people that we're working with, and it doesn't even take a very good spidey sense to get to know Casey and feel like, yeah, this is a great person to work with, and somebody that will kind of partner with.
And the truth is, like, when you're buying these businesses, you're going basically on all like unaudited data in the first place, right? So like, you really do need to trust the numbers that you're given, and a lot of things.
Right. So there are moments in time where we're going through, like, Casey's business, for example, had a bunch of Shopify ads, or a bunch of Shopify business and on Amazon, and there are points in time where, in order for us to fully audit what Facebook ads were for the Shopify side of the business, which we were kind of treating differently than the Amazon business, would be a whole bunch of work. And that, it was towards the end of the process where we're able to say, like, we trust you, and we're partnering with you in this way or that way. And it's, again, that's not something that, there are situations where we probably would have felt like we needed to go deeper and sharpen the pencil, but I think we had enough mutual respect and trust at that point that there are situations where you can extend that confidence. But yeah, all that to say that, with Cali White, I think what we saw was, this brand, as Casey said, at a point in time was doing $1 million in sales a month. And through the impact of the pandemic, Casey had trouble getting supply, right? Getting enough product into position to sell. And so had to pull way back on ad spend, and therefore sort of saw organic rankings stumble, I think, over the course of that year. And so it was tricky for us to piece together, like, okay, how much of what happened here was just supply? How much of it is competitive dynamics? There are new brands like Hello that came in a big way into the space. And so basically what we had to do was say, this is a different trend line than most of the brands that we're buying, but do we believe that the fundamentals are there? And the reality is, yeah, we've got hundreds of thousands of customers that love this, that are repeat purchasers. I think the subscribe and save and the repeat customer rate is higher here than almost any other product in our catalog. And so what we saw there was a great foundation upon which, and a real true brand, I would say, that kind of has more levers for us to pull than just tweaking PPC, right? So Mike can get into this, but this is a brand where, Casey never had the ability to sort of push into brick and mortar. Our head of brick and mortar right now was on a Slack channel this morning showing facings of a natural food store saying, like, boom, there's a hole right here. This is what we have to pursue, right? And that's not, that's probably not going to be the case for our silicone tongs, where it's just,
right,
we're not going to compete with OXO, but this has a real distinct brand opportunity. Getting back into, or really going into Europe, it has some complications, but we know that there's kind of long-term potential there, and a big category. And then frankly, Mike leads a lot of our affiliate and partnership, sort of off Amazon partnership opportunities, where we know that there are a bunch of levers we can pull. So between the off Amazon opportunities and the ability to, take a good run at doing the reinvestment to re-rank and get back, now that we've got our supply chain into a bit more of a solid spot, was kind of came to the point of time where it was a bet that we were taking on a turnaround, where normally kind of, historically most of our brands had not been in that situation, but whereas we got to know Casey, we got to know the brand fundamentals, sort of saw the opportunity to bet behind that, and bet behind a good partnership going forward.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, so now Casey is kind of, seems like, involved with Mike on working on the brand and working to grow the brand. How involved does a founder kind of that sells needs to be? Is it optional? Is it, obviously there's I'm sure in most deal structures there's upside there's not 100% cash paid at closing, right? There's
Yep.
there's some percentage that's left for kind of future. So how should people selling who say, hey, I want to sell and like I want to be done with this. Like I've been working on this thing for 5 years every day, dealing with, ASINs getting taken down and fighting battles every day. And I kind of want to be done while balancing out like, hey, I have this upside potential and I want to make sure the brand is, is growing at the same time. What's the kind of balance of involvement with, founders who are selling?
Yeah, it's a great question. And the first thing I'll say is that it varies. It can vary quite a bit. And if you were listening to just the conversation so far, you might think it's helpful to get to some clarity on this. I would say the vast majority of our transactions, and I do think this varies by acquirer. I know that there are people, there's some folks that are basically, doing a financial transaction, but sort of, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but basically you're still doing your job. But you've sort of had a first exit and have a second exit in the future as more of like a private equity investor sort of model. Run from there to kind of our standard deal where there's a whole bunch of transition work in month one, a modest amount of transition work in month two where you're tracking down open orders and things like that. And then after that, like it's probably a couple of emails every month to say like, to find out what's going on with something that's stranded at a 3PL. That's what I would say is kind of the norm. And in Casey's situation, I think the gist of it is that you guys should fill me in because I haven't been that close kind of post close. But the idea here was, we're going to take over day-to-day operations of the brand from getting POs placed, managing the listings, managing PPC, managing pricing. When the ASIN gets suppressed, we're solving it, figuring it out. But as Casey sort of was able to step back and step back away from the day-to-day, that we did want to have, he's got a bunch of deep oral care expertise. And so as part of his transition work, it's not like he's getting the product relisted when it gets taken down by Amazon. It's more like, let's get you in some strategy sessions with Mike and our broader team to say like, what are let's rack and stack our 10 priority levers. And, what have you tried before that you'd say, hey, Mike, that's actually a dumb idea, didn't work for X, Y, or Z reasons. And here are the 3 things I've always wanted to do that you're not talking about that we should think about. And so that's kind of my view of what's, how Casey, I think, has had probably a bit more than average involvement, but still not sort of a situation where he's in the account every day. I certainly hope not. And then the last thing that's unique about Casey is that he had a fairly big proportion of sales that were on QVC. And I don't know if this is on video or on voice only, but Casey's way more handsome than me and Mike. And so we knew that we could
very white teeth. I mean,
yeah, it was very white teeth.
I got to look the part. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah. And so Casey's continuing, in the structure, he's able to continue to have the profits of just basically running the QVC channel for the next 2 years, and we'll eventually likely transition that over. But kind of that was in both sides' best interests, and so that's a bit unique here. But I would say the norm is kind of within 6 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks. You're pretty much hands off. But in a world in which there's a bunch of big strategic choices in a turnaround like this, I think it's in everyone's best interest just to have live dialogue. And then there are sellers that we're not asking for input from, but then they'll email me a week before Mother's Day and say, this one competitor always does this one image change on Mother's Day. Like, we need to do this. And, it's great. We love hearing that. We love getting all sources of input.
Yeah. I would add to that. We kind of have an open door policy on the brand management side. And so to the extent that founders want to be involved longer, Casey has my number, shoots me texts all the time. Like, hey, I was just thinking about this, or I just read about this thing. And we welcome that. For us, the very first thing we do after we ostensibly take over a brand is try to figure out exactly what made it successful, what the founder did right to turn it into a superstar brand. And so it's really important to us that the founder feels comfortable coming to us, telling us what they think. If they're watching something, seeing some opportunity that we're not seeing, we welcome that feedback. And
I want to say, Mike has never seemed annoyed at me texting him or bugging him about anything. So thanks for that, Mike.
No, it's
But yeah,
totally genuine. We love hearing from you.
All right, great. Yeah, I did want to say one thing. So, my unique situation where the company was like a decline on sales. So Nate did a really good job of structuring the deal to where if we turned it around, I benefited fully from it. So our incentives are extremely aligned, so they don't need to require me to work for them. And plus, I created the brand and I'm always going to be there if they need to talk to me about strategy or the new oil care products. So yeah, I just feel like the contract too incentivizes me to keep kind of a pulse in the market and know what's going on. So
and I also feel like when you create a brand versus just some mix of products, there's probably more of an emotional connection to it, right? Than
exactly. Yeah. It was my story. And then, the blood, sweat, and tears that goes into an Amazon. And then, I try to create a brand here. That's why, and actually this is one thing I wanted to say, which I wish I would have done in hindsight. I was trying to grow outside in so many different channels. We really pushed QVC, we really pushed Shopify, and then, started some social channels to grow the brand. And in hindsight, if I would have known the market for FBA acquisition and what they really cared about, I probably would have put more of a focus on Amazon. I had just been frustrated with Amazon, with the shipping times, with COVID, and all that kind of stuff. I kind of put my focus away, but yeah, I just wanted to grow brands. So it's basically.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. You were not necessarily preparing the business for sale, right? But you mentioned to me before we hit record, had you been preparing the business for sale, you would have probably done things a little bit differently. What are some of these things that sellers should be thinking about today if they want to
I can actually tell you what really helped a lot. So the due diligence documents that Perch gives you, I'm sure you could get something similar to that online. So I would advise any FBA seller right now that wants to sell, go ahead and try to find some due diligence documents that would be closely related to something that Perch would give you. Because once you organize your business in that way, it gives you a lot of clarity, right? And then when the metrics they're looking for, the profit margins they get, you can start within 4 to 6 months changing your supply chain and business to fit that, right? So you can maximize the multiple and what you're getting. So because I wasn't trying to sell, I was trying to focus on growth, not as much profit margin, and I was testing out channels. Shopify can take a lot of trial and error to get to work, So yeah, in hindsight, know what the future acquisition market's going to look like when you're selling and try to work backwards that way. So that would be my advice.
But is there if you, meaning on the one hand, if you haven't fully optimized the business, then somebody who's looking to acquire it is saying, hey, there's some things in here that I can optimize for and increase.
That's actually a good point too. Maybe
profits, right? So
yeah.
So I'd be curious to hear from Nate's standpoint.
Yeah, Nate would be able to answer that.
If a business is perfect on all angles, are you still interested in buying that business?
I mean, it's a really fascinating question, and there's definitely some sort of mathematical curve that if I had gone to an Ivy League school, I could know the exact curve, as you said at the beginning of your on. But yes, you're right that certainly a business that is seeing stable and steady growth is going to have a higher cash at close multiple than something that's challenged or declining naturally, because you're looking at run rate versus a year ago. That's kind of obvious. There's a counterpoint where, especially after COVID, when we see something that has tripled in profit, quadrupled in profit, and it's a jump rope that raised their price from $9 to $25.99. That's just a business I can't in good faith buy at almost any multiple because it's just so unpredictable.
Right.
That's a different story. But there is a third version of really amazingly well-run brand, fully penetrated into Europe, into all the geographies, which is one of our key growth levers, really optimized PPC spend, and where they're not spending nothing and they're not spending 20% tacos. And so it means that they're clearly experts on that. Already Boku merchandising, excellent merchandising. They're doing meaningful volume in Shopify or Walmart profitably, and they've got off Amazon partnerships. At that point, it's kind of well, what's Mike going to do? And any multiple that we're paying on a business is because we believe we're going to grow the profit of that business. And so there is kind of a paradoxical element for me. And this is the way that Perch approached it. Like we're trying to be thoughtful about what is going to happen and how the future is going to play out. And, on the one hand, somebody might salivate over that business that I just described that's doing everything perfectly and pay like the richest multiple for that. I wouldn't. I would pay more for something, a higher multiple for something where there's still levers I can go pull. Would I want to own that business? Absolutely yes, because it sounds like it's a great foundation, and we have bought businesses like that. But the growth story is more of a challenge, and you need to probably believe more in product infill, which I think has its own risks and variability too. But it's I would say you should always try to do everything with the best extent that you can, but also so it's not like you should start to sandbag one element of your performance. But the reality is that's super hard. Like, and it takes, like Casey was saying, it takes a team to get there oftentimes. Yeah. And so the thing that I would encourage people to think about is like, what's the marginal effort associated with eking out that next step? And if it's something you can do without doubling your effort or your sort of team investment, then you should do that. But if launching in Europe is something you haven't done and you're selling medical products and there's like all sorts of crazy compliance stuff, we have paid compliance experts that have spent 20 years in this space that are like in-house. And so that's the sort of thing where it's like, yeah, I wouldn't bother with that. Right. That's the sort of thing. Whereas if it's like, hey, I think a merchandising refresh can bump my conversion by 50%, you should do that.
Right.
But you got to kind of pick your battles of what you want.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess even if you have a great business that's growing, that is well optimized, there is the vision for what is the next 6 to 18 months kind of look like from product development, and here's the next 7 products I'd be launching in the next year, and coming with that to somebody buying the business and showing them the growth potential, I think is really important, right? Because I think anybody that's looking to buy the business is trying to think about, where am I going to get growth from, in this in this business. Basically, so your plan also is not to just sort of like optimize for FBA, but you're looking at retail opportunities as well with some of the brands that you're purchasing.
Yeah, there are definitely like fairly boring brands we have that will never be a Shopify brand, or will just like not have a right to compete in brick and mortar. Cali White, I think, is on one end of the spectrum with that. So Mike, I'll probably pivot to you. We haven't synced up very recently, so I'd love to hear what you guys are doing on the brand side.
Well, we'll just have a team meeting right here.
Well, so no, I think one thing that's important context for Cali White in B2B sales or brick and mortar sales is that we want to pursue the strengths of the brand. So we're not acquiring a widgets business and trying to throw it into Whole Foods. But in Casey's case, he had done a lot of really important work in order to sell on QVC. So things like getting his claims clinically substantiated. He had some approvals that were impressive. His branding and his brand is really professional and is done with really high quality merchandising. So it made it a natural fit to move into our B2B pipeline. Same goes for our affiliate channel. We have a robust and very fast growing affiliate function at our business. And teeth whitening is a good category for the affiliate business. But Casey having a product that's made in the United States, natural, in a category that's reasonably trendy and has healthy margin, it just makes it an amazing candidate for this.
And when you say like affiliate marketing, is that you go into like publishers, online in terms of like affiliate deals, or what does affiliate marketing kind of look like when you're looking to enter that space with a brand?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a great question. So there's a massive ecosystem of Amazon affiliates. Mm-hmm. They're all over. They range from large publications to individual people posting daily on TikTok. And at Perch, we have a really big advantage in in working with these individuals because we have a very wide variety of products that fit a wide variety of end customers. And so another way to put it is we have a lot of content for them to post about. And so we're able to develop relationships with a framework of brands that we have today. And each time we add a new brand to our portfolio, we can kind of push with the relevant affiliates to see if there's opportunities. It also gives us the opportunity to be a little bit more in control of sales, right? Many partners that we work with like to do things like exclusive deals or et cetera. And so if we have a product that we're interested in pushing or a new product they're interested in launching, we have the opportunity to work with them to do that type of thing.
Makes sense. And the ability to have sort of multiple products in a category and work with influencers or affiliates, it's just going to allow you to be in touch with those sources, basically more often.
Those deals are like they've got two sides to them though, because we've had, they generally either don't go as well as we would have liked, or they go way too well and we're out of stock like immediately. So I know there have been some like, whoa, what just happens? And sometimes we know that these sort of publications are coming out and we can plan around it. And then other times we see like a 20x day sales on some brand, and Joe from our growth team says like, what happened? And it's something like that.
We joke there's two types of posts that come from influencers or partners. One is the type where they send you an email and they say, hey, my thing went live, check it out. The other is the type where you go to business reports and then you send them an email. You say, hey, I see your thing went live.
Right. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And inventory planning around that, I'm sure can be challenging too, because you really don't know how something might perform. Where on Amazon, you kind of know your ACoS, your sessions, your conversions, and kind of like what that looks like. So it allows you to be in control, but in some sense, you kind of also, from an inventory standpoint, need to have a strong inventory capabilities to make sure you don't go out of stock, right? When those kind of things happen. I want to jump to you, Nate, and kind of maybe talk a little bit about, in general, like what do you look for when, as you look to buy brands? Obviously there's thousands of brands that you can go out and buy. What does Perch, primarily look for as far as like category, size, revenue, margins, in general?
Yeah. So we, it's a great question. In terms of category, we're pretty agnostic. There are some, I would say, bad neighborhoods of Amazon that have, it feels like, disproportionate black hat that we steer clear of, just because we never will do that. And if we buy a brand that was
like quilting, for example.
Quilting? I didn't know the quilting.
a lot of crazy black hat going on in quilting. Yeah.
Nothing would surprise me at this point. But yeah, we're fairly category agnostic, and so most of it is we have this thesis that have demonstrated that they can win on Amazon, and that have the social credibility of review and rating, either dominant or sort of competing for leadership positions, and are overall just a high quality product that is resonating with customers. That those brands are ours to lose. That sort of their right to continue succeeding is there, and we can only build on that for the long haul, both on Amazon and off Amazon. And so the number one thing we're looking for is a set of products that are a brand of products. It could be a cohesive brand like Casey's. It could be somebody that has a bunch of random things, but they've got a number of winning products within one brand umbrella, but sort of competing in different niches. But at the end of the day, we're looking for things that have demonstrated great review and rating counts, solid underlying unit economics. So these are things that you're able to do a high volume at reasonable margin. So we see everywhere from 20% to 30, 35%, sometimes higher, but don't really bank on that being permanent net margins. And again, like I said, love it if there are things that we come in and say, hey, we know that we can go pull X, Y, or Z levers, which is generally the case somewhere. And in terms of size range, it's moved up quite a bit over time. We started off kind of looking at anything that was $1 million in revenue or higher. And that is still true. We will look at like a single ASIN $1 million revenue brand, but generally speaking, the brands we're buying are significantly larger than that typically today. So I would say, the median thing right now is in the 8 figures. But also there's a whole bunch of great businesses that are 7 figures that we're excited about as well.
Have you found that it's just like, instead of managing 10 brands that are $1 million each, it's just easier to run one brand that's $10 million?
Yeah. One transaction process, kind of
Right.
one set of suppliers that there's a relationship with. And generally speaking, those are in larger markets where we see a larger opportunity. And then, the businesses like Perch will succeed or die, mostly by like your ability to manage complexity. And so that is the name of the game. Right now, we are buying a number of very complex businesses. And I absolutely would have said no 4 months ago, but as we've scaled up our operating team with people who are way smarter than me, we've got increasing capability and kind of
Ivy League people.
Yeah, exactly. But no, we've got folks that we've got folks that did a bunch of complicated logistics at Wayfair. We're right down the street from them. We've got a bunch of ex-Wayfair people. And so, they know how to move big and bulky things around the country. They know how to stand up a facility. So we just brought on somebody who's going to run our physical warehousing, which previously we did all 3PLs. But we're increasingly realizing that supply chain expertise is going to be a differentiator here, and we have a lot of it. Realizing that the tech behind managing, buying a 1,000 SKU brand, which, to be clear, I would way rather not buy a 1,000 SKU brand, but like I'm pretty sure that not many of our competitors have the tech to do that really well, and even to take the deep breath and do that. And we're realizing that that's a differentiator. So we've definitely invested in our ability to manage complexity. And my ops team will kill me because they'll say, still, please just buy the simple ones. But we're like every time we do something new, it's building out our capability to sort of open up our addressable market in the future. And I won't talk about all the different ways that looks, but basically new channels, new capabilities, new geos that open up.
And all that is upside for the founders that are selling their brands.
Right. Because as we honestly, we said no to sort of running Casey's QVC business initially, and I think he was excited to continue doing that. But the reality is we've since come under LOI with the business where we are planning to take that over, because they had a paid actor. And so we kind of knew oh great, Nader Mike doesn't have to go on TV because we wouldn't be good at it. But that is now a channel where we kind of get our foot in the door in all these places. And again, our kind of multi-channel team is saying, let's rack and stack our catalog and say, what are things that we can push there? Oh, amazing, our satina leggings, could definitely sell those on QVC. Let's make sure we've got stock, but let's go get get somebody out there driving that. And so you're absolutely right that we kind of have this best-in-class informal mastermind that we would like to formalize a bit, which is everybody we're buying a business from was doing something better than everyone else that we've ever interacted with. And we're trying to piece together the various strengths that people had and say, where does this thing that they were doing really well translate to another brand?
Cool. Yeah. So I mean, great story of building this brand and partnering with Perch to sell it and continue to grow it. Casey, I want to end off with, you just had a baby. You're still young. What do you think about as you kind of sell this, and what is next for you in terms of you exit a brand? First of all, what's a feeling like suddenly to kind of something you were working on for many years and you kind of giving up to some extent? Is that like bittersweet in a sense? And
it is, yeah.
What are the things that people will feel as they exit and think about what's next?
It's crazy. I thought I was just, like having an Amazon business, like it's hard to sleep sometimes. You're always worried about ASINs getting shut off and things like that. You have so much risk all the time. So just alleviating that, I was like, I'm going to be able to sleep better. But then I had a kid that exact same time, so I wasn't sleeping. But so in the near future, I'm hoping to sleep a little bit. But I really, just kind of decompress from it. When you're in Amazon every day, it's so dynamic. It's changing so much. Just to take a step back has been nice. I'm ready to jump back in. I don't know exactly in what facet yet. I have a ton of ideas, and then we'll see what it holds. I think there's still a lot of opportunity on Amazon. I just think like what Nate spoke to, it's so complex now. Like just for example, running the QVC portion of the business, the logistics side of it is like almost a full-time job for someone, and I was doing it, so to really grow in those retail channels and everything else, you need someone else. So I know I was like giving it away to someone that I didn't truly know yet their capabilities. I just had a good feeling, but I think brand owners should not see it as much of a risk, and there's more upside when you go to someone like Perch, because you're never going to be able to do it on your own without a lot of sacrifice and investment. So really think about that. And I put I'm a big surfer. I put a lot of focus on my lifestyle. I want to make sure I can do the things I want to do and then spend time with my kids. So you got to consider all that when you're making the decision. And, I've been really happy so far, and I'm excited to, really start pushing. It takes a few months for them to get a hold of it, understand the brand and get everything. So yeah, in the short term, I'm just going to work with them. Maybe, I've been toiling a little crypto stuff, but eventually I will probably do another brand. So
awesome. Great. Well, yeah, really appreciate Nate, Casey, Mike coming on and kind of talking about this experience of working with Casey Cali White and acquiring and growing the brand. So thanks so much for coming on.
All right. Thanks so much
for having us.
Thank you so much for listening. If you are not in the e-commerce mindset Facebook group, there's a link in the show notes to join the group. And I'd love a review of the podcast on iTunes as well, if you haven't had a chance to do that. And I'll see you on the next episode of the e-commerce mindset podcast.